My community, or the pastoralist community, yes, they do have big size of land, and they use the land purposely for farming and cattle rearing. And most of the time, because of the climate change, we do the agroecological zoning, whereby we start from point 1, you come to the middle of the land, up to the end of the land, because of the purpose of grazing. The proposal should consider the production system of the land. It's not only saying the land because we are doing farming or building of houses or other businesses is taken to be not idle. But when you are doing the cattle rearing, then the land is taken as idle land. Our system of production and the draft of this motion should visit our area and understand how these communities uses their land. We are coming, now we are in the process from Kajiado, where we are converting our land. Our land used to be group ranches. But now we are converting the land, and every member can get a land of a size of 21 acres. So by the time people are seeing, maybe if you drive along the road, you see the land there, let me tell them that the land is not idle. Very soon, every member from Kajiado South will be having a right of ownership and will be having a title deed. And the story of maybe seeing our lands as an idle land maybe will come to a rest. I also need to remind the proposer on the issue to look at, issue to do with wildlife conservation, forest area, and large agricultural farmlands. Sometimes you find out we have done what is called conservancy. We have created corridors, and these corridors and the conservancies are there to help in conjunction with the wildlife, that is the parks and game reserve, try to help the wildlife. So if you see that we have created a corridor, a buffer, or a conservancy, it should not be considered as idle or wasteland. It is taking care of our wildlife. The other issue we do have the forest areas. And I know because you come from those sides, along the Chulu Hills. The land along there is forest land. And now even this country should be proud of us because we are doing the issue to do with carbon. And we are promoting tourism a lot. Maybe what you should consider, the issue of minimum and maximum land, the minimum size of the land you can own in the urban and peri-urban areas should be the one to be tabled in this house and be considered, because the issue of doing subdivision on small size of land, then it limits the usage of the land or the control, the excessive control of the land in maybe the half an acre, an eighth, or a quarter. So I stand here to oppose the motion and maybe tell the drafter to go and look and maybe to have the clear picture of issues to do with the land. Because the pastoral community have been targeted many times. But when we come to the famine and drought or the challenges we face, we can never hear them talking about us. But when it comes to that we own our slices of land, then it becomes the debate on the house. I stand guided, but I want to ask my colleague, Ferdinand Wanyonyi, when the issue is taken to land, to the Committee of Land to check it, let them consider those factors of wildlife, conservation, agricultural farmlands, consider how the pastoralists keep their cows, consider how they use their land. We use our land depending on how we zone them. So if they consider that, then I think I stand to oppose the motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
What is out of order, Honorable Catherine Omanyo?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think somebody has not understood the motion. I don't think anybody is fighting pastoralists here. We are talking about land that might be there, but it is not in use. There is nothing wrong with owning chunks of land, but what use is it in? That's where we are headed to. So in my own opinion, it is the idle land or land that has been grabbed. That
Honorable Catherine Omanyo, you're out of order. You know, this is a house of debate.
Yes, but
And
some
the honorable
people,
members can debate whichever way they choose.
okay,
They
then
must be debating based on the information that they have gathered. So we are not, you are not in a position to guide the honorable members how they are going to debate this motion. So you are out of order. But being a new member, I know that you are still learning the standing orders, so you are out of order, Catherine. Honorable Omanyo, take your seat. Take your seat. Only 1 minute on this motion, and I would like to give this opportunity to the Honorable Timothy Toretich, member for Marakwet. Take into account that it is 1 minute, Honorable.
Now,
Honorable Toretich.
Madam Speaker, I don't know whether I can proceed or we can, when we resume debate at 2 p.m., I can be able to. But, Madam Speaker, let me contribute so that my time may be saved for the other time, for the remaining time in the afternoon. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this motion, and I thank the honorable member, Mheshimiwa Ferdinand Wanyonyi, for bringing this motion. Madam Speaker, Article 68 of the Constitution is couched in mandatory terms. Madam Speaker, it provides very clearly that Parliament shall enact legislation to provide for minimum and maximum acreage. Madam Speaker, when the law uses the term shall, then it means it is mandatory. For that reason, Madam Speaker, I have seen there was a law, there was a bill for this House, that is the Maximum and Minimum Land Holding Acreages Bill, 2015. Madam Speaker, but the same was shut down because of public outcry. Madam Speaker, it is time, in my opinion, to revisit that law because that bill provided a comprehensive legal and institutional framework on matters to do with minimum and maximum acreage. Madam Speaker, the importance of that legislation is that it provided a framework so that it provides for a certain region how much land can be held or how much land can be used for a specific purpose. So, Madam Speaker, I can see my time is up. We can have the afternoon session so that I can be able to finish the substantive part. Thank you.
Well, very well spoken, member for Marakwet. Honorable members, debate on this motion is up, and I would like to call upon the mover to reply. The Honorable Wanyonyi.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This debate, this motion has drawn a lot of interest because I can see even now, which you gave us another 2 hours, people have a lot of interest in this, but I want to give my colleagues at least 1 minute each or 2 minutes each to be able to complete before lunch hour. I call upon Honorable Udo. Udo, 2 minutes, Madam Speaker, if you allow, to be able to 2 minutes. Thank you. After Udo, I'll have Clement Siayo, Bapo Wino. He has left. Okay. Then we have Kaiti, CNN, Honorable Catherine Omanyo. She there? But you have been told that you're out of order. And of course, Honorable Larry and Edith Nyenje, in that order. Please, if you can take 1 minute each. I know the order, this motion is, of course, and of course, my brother, Honorable Kirwa. Kirwa will be last one. Madam Speaker, if you allow. Thank you. before I make it my closing remarks. As listed.
There are 8, so 1 minute each, and you'll have 2 minutes to conclude. Let's start with the Honorable Oudo.
Hello, Honorable Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. This is an emotive debate, and I wish, as he has said, we could have been allocated more time. But this debate should not lose focus on the principles of land administration, should not lose focus on Article 60, should not lose focus of Article 40 of the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, the drafters of the Constitution place us in a conundrum, both legal, administrative, and professional. I do not know how we'll ever get out of this mess. Honorable Speaker, but one of the basic principles of highest and best use should hold. The issue of land holding capacity should also hold as we debate this motion. Otherwise, it's a motion that's good enough to bring the matter to the fore for national debate. Thank you.
Ra.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this motion by Honorable Wanyonyi by saying the following. Historically, the areas, especially where I come from in Sabatia, you know, people own very small pieces of land, but we are good farmers. We want to ask our friends in Nzoia, Uasin, Gishu, and Laikipia, those who are owning land that is lying idle, to please allow us to lease those pieces of land for us to continue doing our farming, to assist those areas that are hit by famine and drought-hit areas. And then one way of dealing with the land fragmentation, we will advise that we consolidate the existing land records through digitization at the Lands Ministry for us to be safe in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to take opportunity to thank Wanyonyi for this motion, and I want to support this motion with some amendment, Madam Speaker, because, Madam Speaker, we know that there are people who has thousands of lands, acres of land, and Madam Speaker, when those people are acquiring the land, some of them, they use the facilities from the banks, others, they work hard to get the land. And the time they were buying that land, they did not close us in a room so that they can buy land. They use their own resources. So, Madam Speaker, we need to talk and support those amendments on those who have their lands to be protected, and the government to utilize the public land to irrigate. Like in Ukambani, there is a big land which need to be irrigated and produce food which can feed this country. And that's why I'm opposing GMO, because we have land in Kenya.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support, and I want just to give one point where the farmers that are stranded and have land, the government should prioritize them and pay some incentives or something to motivate those who don't put their land in use so it can be in use. And then also, it will also reduce the gap of the poor from the rich, so that at least we have either way Kenya having a healthier society if we put any land that is idle in use.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise to support the motion by Honorable Wanyonyi. One, by saying that this country does not lack legislation and policy on land issues, on the maximum and the minimum land that we should have and make use of. In Kiambu, for example, we have seen very rich agricultural land being subdivided, fragmented into a point where now this country is talking about hunger. And I think we just need to implement, to enforce the policies and the laws so that we are able to continue feeding ourselves. On idle land, large tracts of land, I also support that we need either to lease out the pieces of land to people who can be able to make use of them. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me take this opportunity to thank Wanyonyi. Secondly, I will support this motion with some amendments, Madam Speaker, because we use land as a store of value. And if we are wealthier, or rather we have more wealth than what we have, Madam Speaker, I think you are not supposed to be limited on amount of land you can own. Secondly, the issue of minimum, I don't know how much is recommended, what kind of size of land you can own in a minimum way. So, Madam Speaker, I will support, but with amendments. I am looking forward for the motion going forward to amendments, and we will be able to discuss about it. With those few remarks, I support.
The Honorable Abraham Kirua.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand to support this motion by my fellow member, Wanyonyi, that for sure we need to enact this regulation that is already there, Article 68(1), C1 of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, there are several people in this country. Of course, we talk of fragmentation of land, that it has truly caused, it is continuing until where somebody owns 0.01% of an hectare, which is not productive. So if we enact, Madam Speaker, laws that will try to make sure that we don't do a lot of fragmentation, it will help us. Two, there are a lot of people who own huge tracts of land and it is not productive. I think we should limit as to how much land can one actually own. Because if 2 or 3 or less than 10 people own a half of the whole nation, it is not productive. So I support this motion that it should be enacted.
The Honorable Edith Nyenze is the last one on this.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me take this opportunity to support Honorable Wanyonyi, but not on the maximum and minimum capping. But I would say that more studies should be done to know exactly how much one should own. But one of them, he has proposed that public universities or public institutions like universities and national schools should not hold onto large chunks of land, but instead of expanding horizontally, they should build their buildings going up. And the land left fallow should be used for food production. This one is very, very important. Then the other one, Madam Speaker, is that I would call the Honorable Wanyonyi to also include protection of the rights of Kenyans. Like in my county, there are some people who have land where there is corn beneath, but speculators go and buy land at a very low price and then sell at
Honorable Wanyonyi, you have 2 minutes to conclude reply to this motion.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. 2 minutes may be too little, but I want to take this opportunity to thank all the members who have actually contributed this motion. And I want to assure you that the next move will be for me to be able to get the Minister of Land and the Ministry of Agriculture to come together so that you can be able to have this as a bill move forward. Madam Speaker, I want to make it very clear. We are not talking about pastoralists. Somebody talked about he has a lot of land for pastoralists. We are not talking about that. Those who have, because if you have a pastoralist like I think where is this? I think the Maasai area. That land is being used by the livestock. So we are not talking about that. We are talking about people who own land, large tracts of land, and does not use it for anything. He doesn't have the livestock, he doesn't have anything else, but is using that land, maybe if it's 300 acres, he's only using 50 acres. And therefore, this land that is lying idle, he should be able to lease it, or be able to sell it, or for that reason, the government will come up with a motion, with a way of actually taxing that little land. Because today, the population is growing. We are now actually importing food, and yet we have a lot of land. The president said the other day that we are going to import food from Russia, yet they are actually at war. What is happening to our people? So therefore, Madam Speaker, I want to thank members, and moving forward, I'll be able to move to meet the people who are concerned so they can have this as a bill and pass it to be able to protect the Kenyans from actually people who just own land for the sake of it. Others own land to sell to make money, and therefore they don't use land for the purpose of cultivation of a food for this country, and this country need food. Those are the businessmen. I think we'll talk about it, and therefore I want to thank everybody who has taken part to talk about it, and so I reply. Thank you.
Point of order.
2 minutes.
The Honorable Wilberforce Oundo.
Honorable Speaker, listening to the members contribute and knowing how emotive land issue is, and reading the mood of the House, I stand on pursuant to Standing Order 53.3, and I wish to request that the question on the motion be deferred until time the House Business Committee will decide. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Oundo. I defer putting of the question on this motion. Next order. Leader of Majority. The Honorable Majority Leader has a notice of motion, so you may proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for indulgence to give this notice out of time. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give you notice that acknowledging that Article 256 of the Constitution provides for the process of amending the Constitution by parliamentary initiative, further acknowledging that Standing Order 114.7a of the National Assembly Standing Orders provides for the process of introducing legislative proposals in respect of propositions amending the Constitution, noting the general debate in the House on the legislative proposal to amend the Constitution to entrench the National Government Constituencies Development Fund, the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, the Senate Oversight Fund, and the Economic Stimulus and Empowerment Fund in the Constitution. Cognizant of the comments and views of honorable members during general debate on the legislative proposal, recognizing the need for a bicameral approach on the proposal prior to the publication of the relevant bill, acknowledging that the subject matter of the legislative proposal cuts across the mandate of more than one committee of the House. Now, therefore, in furtherance to the provisions of Article 256 of the Constitution, amendment by parliamentary initiative, this House resolves, 1, to establish a joint parliamentary ad hoc committee on a proposal to amend the Constitution to entrench certain specialized funds comprising 9 members from each of the Houses of Parliament to A, facilitate collation of the views from the comments by members of Parliament during the general debate on the proposal, and inviting members with similar or related proposals to make submissions before the committee. B, invite, engage with, and consider submissions from stakeholders and relevant constitutional and statutory bodies with a law reform mandate, including the Attorney General and commissions and independent offices established under Chapter 15 of the Constitution. C, in consultation with the sponsors, attempt to develop and recommend a harmonized version of the proposal arising from the submissions received, and D, report to the Houses of Parliament within 90 days to enable the speakers to make a decision and give direction on whether or not the legislative proposal is to be published into a bill or not to be proceeded with. 2, that the offices of the clerks of Houses of Parliament provide secretariat services to the Joint Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee in accordance with the standing orders. 3, that the following members represent the National Assembly in the Joint Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee. 1, the Honorable Samuel Kiprono Chepkonga, MP, as a co-chairperson. 2, the Honorable Ekomas Mwengi Mutuse, MP. The Honorable Wakili Edward Mureu, MP. The Honorable Catherine Nanjala Wambilianga, MP. The Honorable John Buddy, EGH, MP. Honorable Dr. Otiende Amolo, MP. The Honorable David Mwalika
Mboni MP, the Honorable Kakai Bisau MP, the Honorable Rebecca Tonkei MP, the Honorable Robert Gishimu Githinji MP, who is a co-opted member, and the Honorable Stephen Mule MP as co-opted member. 4, to request the Senate to also appoint a similar number of members to represent the Senate in the Joint Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Leader of Majority. Next order.
Order number 10, motion. Consideration of sessional paper number 1 of 2022 on the national automotive policy.
Leader of Majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopt sessional paper number 1 of 2022 on the national automotive policy laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. Honorable Speaker, therefore beg to move that this sessional paper number 1 of 2022 on national automotive policy, whose overall objective, Honorable Speaker, is to provide an enabling environment for our automotive industry players to realize their full potential and position Kenya as a major automotive manufacturer. Honorable Speaker, the aim of this policy is to improve the local automotive assembly ecosystem, to expand the local market size by promotion of local parts manufacturing. Honorable Speaker, members will appreciate that our local assembly industry, largely as a result of the liberalization of the market in the 90s, did suffer immensely. And this led to the near collapse of the local assembly industry, and we saw a lot of completed units being imported in the country, Honorable Speaker, and consequently also the manufacture of parts or automotive spare parts. That industry also came almost to a complete halt and almost the industry dying. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, this national automotive policy has been developed through a very large consultative stakeholder process and is informed by Kenya's developmental agenda and industry needs. Stakeholders' views, Honorable Speaker, from the dealers, consumers, the assemblers, the auto component manufacturers, governments, global players, training, research, and development institutions were incorporated in developing this policy, and therefore a very comprehensive policy that has taken views from largely all the stakeholders that I have mentioned, and including consumers of auto parts and automotive mobiles, Honorable Speaker. As I mentioned, Honorable Speaker, the policy objectives, its implementation measures, and guiding principles are aligned to our domestic, regional, and international obligations, including and not limited to the Paris Agreement enforced from November 2016, which sets the objective of limiting the global temperature rise in this century. Honorable Speaker, members will also appreciate that the automotive industry is a key pillar of the global economy and is usually a major driver of macroeconomic growth and stability and also technological advancement in both developed and developing countries like ours. The automotive industry, Honorable Speaker, in our country has also been prioritized as a major driver of our country's industrialization and economic transformation. And that is why government is developing this policy that will help guide the industry, Honorable Speaker, the automotive industry, which, as I mentioned, is not only a key driver of macroeconomic growth and stability, but also in terms of advancing technological advancement in economies. And having an economy, Honorable Speaker, that we have to work extra hard to revitalize and advance, Honorable Speaker, it is important that we have policies and measures put in place that will support the automotive industry. Honorable Speaker, according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, the number of registered vehicles have increased by a compound average growth of 9% between 2011 and 2019, rising from 1.6 million in 2011 to 3.3 million in 2019. This, Honorable Speaker, was largely driven by the autocycle and motor car subsectors, which accounted for 46 and 32% respectively of all vehicles registered in 2019. Honorable Speaker, that tells you the level at which our economy had moved in. Instead of more vehicles and commercial vehicles being registered, it is more of motorcycles that have been registered to the level of 46% as compared to 32% of motor cars being private use vehicles. Honorable Speaker, currently the local vehicle industry is composed of 6 registered assembly plants, vehicle builders, trailer manufacturers, 22 farms in motorcycle assembly. And that again also points to that steep rise in the number of motorcycles that have been registered, as is also seen with the huge number of assemblers of motorcycles. Honorable Speaker, the local component and parts manufacturing firms, assemblers or dealers and franchise holders who represent original equipment manufacturers, whose membership include Toyota Kenya, Eurasia Limited, PSA Group, manufacturers of Peugeot, the Peugeot vehicle, DT Dobby Kenya Limited, Simba Corporation, and Scania East Africa, etc. Honorable Speaker, the vehicle assembly industry has struggled to stay afloat, as I mentioned, and the industry whose lifeline depended on a very protected market, as I had mentioned earlier. So many manufacturing entities in our country gradually closed shop with the liberalization of our market in the 1990s, the opening up of the market, and we saw huge components of local content not being mandatory, Honorable Speaker, except for the mandatory 25% that was paid for people who are importing units. And this contributed to the heavy decline, Honorable Speaker, of the local parts manufacturers. And consequently, Honorable Speaker, by the mid-2000s, many local content manufacturers had actually closed shop. And people will remember the likes of Marshall's East Africa Limited ending up closing shop, the scale down of many of the other assemblers, Toyota, DT, Dobby, almost all these local motor vehicle manufacturers. Remember Thika Motor, I think they were called Thika Motor Dealers, used to be a very huge outfit. General Motors on Mombasa Road, Thika Motor Dealers in Thika, and many other assemblers ended up closing shop and some downscaling, leading to importation of fully assembled units. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, this national automotive policy has been developed to revitalize this industry and address the myriad of challenges affecting it, which include the lack of a dedicated legal and institutional regulatory framework. As I mentioned, importation of parts by franchise holders, because that is what is currently happening. The franchise holders are importing parts, Honorable Speaker, instead of us procuring from local parts manufacturers, and therefore killing our industrialization goals. Of course, as I mentioned, also the influx of used, fully built units, amongst others, and Honorable Speaker, when you import fully built units, Honorable Speaker, we are killing job opportunities for our young people who are trained automotive engineers and also designers of parts, Honorable Speaker. And we have a huge repository of young men and women who have trained, who can design parts, motor vehicle parts and other machinery parts. But we are denying them the job opportunities simply by allowing the influx of fully built units, be it of motor vehicles or other machinery. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, the national automotive policy takes a holistic approach to propose measures that aim at unlocking the industry potential across the entire value chain and related sectors of the economy. The policy, therefore, aims to do the following. One, provide a legal, institutional, and regulatory framework for the development of the automotive industry, support motor vehicle and motorcycle assembling locally, harmonize standards, also forge collaboration mechanisms in the industry. It also seeks to facilitate market access for sector products and services, including access to public sector procurement. It also seeks to promote innovation, research, development, and technology, to facilitate local components, as I mentioned, parts manufacturing, and also support development of incentive schemes for investments and reinvestment so that we encourage people to invest in this locomotive assembly and parts manufacturing in our country. Honorable Speaker, therefore, to set the industry on long-term growth, on a long-term growth path, these policy measures are premised on the Kenya Vision 2030 blueprint, which aims to transform Kenya into a newly industrialized, middle-income country, providing high quality of life to all its citizens by 2030. Honorable Speaker, in view of the Executive Order number 1 of 2022 and the Kenya Bottom-Up Economic Transformation Agenda 2022 to 2027, this policy will contribute to Kenya's socio-economic development by enhancing the local manufacturing sector, contribution to our GDP, skills development, as I mentioned, and technology transfer, job and wealth creation by facilitating investments. Honorable Speaker, the sector has the potential to employ over 100,000 people directly and close to 1 million people indirectly over the next few years if the policy is passed and implemented. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, and observing the time, I beg to move and urge members to support this session of paper number 1 of 2022 on the national automotive policy. And as I mentioned, Honorable Speaker, it will be quite critical to enabling our manufacturing agenda to thrive and put our country back on revitalization path of the economy and creation of wealth and jobs for our people. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable members, I now propose that this House adopts the motion needs to be seconded.
As Honorable Speaker, you stood up when the Honorable Phyllis Barstow was about to stand to second. And sorry, I omitted that. So may I request the Honorable Professor Phyllis Barstow to second.
Just bow.
I second the motion. Thank you.
Honorable Bartow for seconding the motion. Honorable members, I now propose that this House adopts sessional paper number 1 of 2022 on the national automotive policy laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. Honorable members, debate on this motion will continue during the next sitting when the order is placed before the House. Thank you very much. Honorable members, on the time being 1 p.m., this House stands adjourned until today, Wednesday, 23rd November, 2022 at 2:30 p.m.